Meanwhile, established during the Cold War, let's tell you a bit about NATO. It's a transatlantic security alliance composed of 30 member countries, including the United States. NATO has focused on deterring Russian aggression in recent years, but it has also conducted security operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Kosovo, and Somalia. Now, amid Russia's invasion this year, many NATO allies are providing Kyiv with extraordinary quantities of military supplies, and the alliance could expand to include Finland and Sweden. We're hearing the latest, of course, on those. But joining us to talk more about this, NATO and its expansion plans, and this is also as it pertains to the invasion of Ukraine, is the public affairs analyst, Lester Wilcox. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. We know you are on your way somewhere, but do be safe as you talk to us. But what's your take on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, its military alliance? Are they moving too fast with their expansion?
Well, NATO expansion has been a topical issue for a long time. Since after the Cold War, yes, NATO wants to expand. With the collapse of the Soviet bloc that has the countries like Czechoslovakia, Poland, and other states that were within the Warsaw Pact, since the collapse of the Cold War and then the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, NATO has moved in to fill up the gap by getting more countries to join the alliance in order to have a better security for Europe. The latest being the fact that they wanted Ukraine to join, and of course, Ukraine is just next door to Russia. Now, this whole alliance, it's just for the security of Europe against Russia, because Russia is seen as a powerful and aggressive nation without sound democratic structure that could do anything, anytime within the confines of European security. So it's been on the table for a long time, and right now they have a better grounds to want to go ahead and do the expansion. Yes, this has been won by a lot of people. You remember during the time of Donald Trump was not interested in NATO's expansion, so he slowed down everything about NATO. But with the advent of Biden at the White House, that plan was activated, and that's what we are seeing happening today in Europe with the war in Ukraine by Russia being that expansion.
Also talking about, you mentioned Donald Trump, I also do believe that he was insistent that, member states actually pay their percentage of the GDP for defense military spending. He wasn't happy that, very few states of the over 20-something states were indeed doing that. But then looking at Russia's response, which appears to be sort of backing down from its earlier rhetoric with Finland and Sweden's intention. What do you see in terms of President Putin? And, because this is all stemming from what he didn't want Ukraine doing, joining the EU, joining NATO. But then these other countries are going forward to do just that.
Well, countries like Sweden has been a non-aligned country all this while. They have a neutrality policy of not participating in any military alliance. They see themselves as just a country that just wants peace within their borders and with all their neighbors. So Sweden has never participated in any international peace, international conflict. I think Finland, same to Finland, but because of the happenings in Ukraine, countries are now beginning to reassess their security architecture and their security policy, because it is unheard of. Nobody in his right sense, maybe as at this time last year, nobody would have expected that Russia will invade Ukraine, no matter the provocation. I mean, nobody would have expected it. And so those countries that borders Russia, Finland, Sweden, that borders Russia, now their fears are arrived. The fact that, one day, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but one day, another Putin, maybe long after Putin must have left power, another Putin will wake up and then annex them. Remember the way Putin annexed Crimea? Russia annexed Crimea. Remember that now, because of, I mean, their reason for going into Ukraine, not even minding that it is NATO, because of NATO's membership by Ukraine, but the Donbas region, thinking that they want to liberate the Donbas region. Now, when a country consistently have aggression to its neighbor, a powerful neighbor as such, Ukraine is not a small country, a powerful neighbor as such, then what are the smaller countries? I mean, why would their affairs not be ripe? I mean, and the clause in NATO being that an attack on one is an attack on all, I mean, gives them more security. So, I mean, having this policy of neutrality by Sweden is no longer feasible because in the light of prevailing circumstances, that one day somebody can wake up in Russia, somebody can wake up in Belarus, somebody can wake up elsewhere and attack a country without any form of whatever form of provocation they can talk about. So it's like I mean the Russia playing to the hands of the West or playing to the hands of NATO to actually actualize their expansion. Before now, countries like Estonia, countries like the countries in the Baltic region, they've all joined. The moment the Russian Federation collapsed, they joined NATO immediately for their own security. But because countries like Ukraine had already had a pact with Russia to give up their nuclear capabilities in exchange of non-aggression, a non-aggression pact to give up their nuclear capabilities, so that in guarantee that Russia will not attack them. But of course, that agreement didn't work. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and if not for the resistance of the Ukrainians, if not for the West supporting Ukraine, by now Ukraine will have been history. So, those other states now, Finland and Sweden, that shares long border with Russia, they've only, Russia has only played in the hands of NATO by making those people to rethink their security and for them to join NATO.
Indeed, and also, with the US, UK signing some sort of guarantees for both countries militarily, that also gives them a lot of boost. But finally, Lithuanian president sees the war in Ukraine to be won on the battlefield. Is this what you also agree with?
No war is won on the battlefield and remains circumstance. No matter the battlefield victory, there is still the negotiation parts to the war. Because right now, Russia is finding it difficult to achieve their military objective. Yes, they must have gone overboard in terms of whatever military strategy they've had. The stories coming out of Russia, I'm not blaming Russia entirely for the atrocities, because also, the Ukrainians will also have, share in the blame. But Russia is not getting their military objective achieved within the shortest period of time they wanted it to have achieved. As a matter of fact, Russia would have expected that this war should not last more than 3 weeks, a month maximum, because they were already close to Kiev and before all the resistance came in. So even if the war, you get some military victory at the war front, but you still need to have negotiations at the CB negotiation table. So the war cannot be won at the war front. Even if Russia loses and eventually withdraw, there will still be room for negotiation, diplomatic negotiations at the negotiation table. So no war is won totally at the war front. There must be that window of diplomatic resolutions to clear up all the areas and all the nitty-gritties. But the fact is, right now, Russia is finding it difficult to swallow this pride and to make a retreat. Of course, that will not happen except with some form of rapprochement. And the only people that can bring that rapprochement, as I see it now, is China. Because China has either remained aloof or remained, or because not knowing where to pitch that tent. But if China should start up some diplomatic effort on both parties, both Ukraine and looking at Russia's concern, yes, I know that Russians have legitimate concern with respect to their own security. If Ukraine is part of NATO, and Ukraine as a country, and you have the Western arsenal, nuclear powers being stationed just next door to Russia, of course, nobody will take that lying low. So Russia has a lot of concern, genuine concern, which needs to be addressed, so that this whole thing will just have a way. But it cannot end at the battlefield. It must go to the negotiation table for that to be a diplomatic settlement to the issues.
Thank you, Mr. Alex Wilcox, public affairs analyst. It was a pleasure having you join us on the program.
It's always my pleasure. It's always my pleasure. Thank you. Anytime.